Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels. My guest tonight is Stephan Franck, who any of you that listen to all of the episodes, hi Mom, hi John, um, will remember that Howard Chaykin told me I should read his Palomino. And when Howard Chaykin tells you about a book that you didn't know about, you go and buy it. So I did, and I really liked it. And then I ordered the next two, and was actually a little pissed off when I discovered that it wasn't over yet. But I figured, hey, there's an email address right here. I'm gonna send an email. And so I have Stephan Franck here tonight to talk to me. And in typical me form, I looked up his other stuff later and discovered that, along with this fantastic neo-noir comic, you've also, worked on the Iron Giant and Despicable Me and Smurfs and the new Marvel What If, and didn't you do something on Into the Spider Verse as well?
That's right. Yes,
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute.
it's
How
been
to
a
Train
busy
Your
few
Dragon.
years.
Yeah, one of my students will be insane over the wall when I say that I talked to somebody involved with How to Train Your Dragon. Um,
I was very, very briefly involved in that. I
okay.
was finishing another project and I had 2 weeks left, and they said, "Hey, would you like to do like a crazy sequence on this?" And I was like, "Sure." It's this thing where you have 2 weeks left and you figure like it's going to be like, "Oh, okay, it's gonna be like cool," and I'll show up at 11. And I was like, "Oh, actually, would you mind doing this big thing?" But it was a very small involvement in the movie.
Well, I'm going through your thumbnails here, and it might be small, but it looks cool.
Oh, thanks.
So, I'm going to start by tell me about yourself. Just gonna we're just gonna start there because
Where do I? Well, so I grew up in France,
okay,
and I was very lucky when I was a kid that my parents had a store that sold comics, toys, books, magazines. My dad
I
had a photo studio in the basement and all that
I
stuff.
am
So,
so
so
jealous.
it was like it was magical. So I grew up in this sort of like environment of storytelling where I would just and cigarettes like which is why I never smoked, because to me cigarettes was like the old guys
Right.
trying to when I was at the register and they were like, "Hey kid, I give you a 20." I was like, "No sir, you give me a 5," right? So to me that cigarette is that, you know what I mean? uh but um but yeah, so it was like this neighborhood store that had like was like this hub in the neighborhood. It was like a very sort of very blue collar neighborhood. It was great. And so and I was reading everything. They also had they had back to school supplies, so like the art supplies were there, so I could draw whatever I wanted, read whatever I wanted, books, magazines, all the American comics, all the European comics. And again, my dad had this photo studio, so I was there, with the cameras and everything. Um, so I grew up there, and doing comics and animation since I was 5, 6 years old.
Okay.
And then I saw the movie Heavy Metal when I
Ah,
was 13, and I was like, oh, because it was France and you
I, I
did that.
I have not
And
watched heavy metal yet, but we do have a heavy metal book club that meets monthly on our show.
it's really, um, I'm so sorry. We're recording, right? Is there
Yeah.
any way we could do a pause in the interview? I have this
Oh,
super important
absolutely.
phone call. I absolutely have to, and
Absolutely.
I will
Absolutely.
jump off and write.
All right. You were telling me about your parents' store
Yes,
with the
yes, yes,
comics
yes.
and the early animation because you had a photo studio in the basement. And
So it was completely magical, and to me storytelling was just one, like all those aspects of storytelling was just part of the same sort of life project. I didn't realize that the industry was a lot more siloed, and I grew up just doing animation, and I was saying earlier, I saw the movie Heavy Metal when I was
right.
13, and it kind of cemented like not only the fact that I was gonna do this stuff forever, but also the fact that animation and comics could, it was a confirmation. It was a fluke, but it was, in
Right.
my mind, was a confirmation that
Now,
all that stuff works
were
together.
you were you reading Metal or Launch when you saw
Yes,
the movie? So you already
actually,
were familiar
after
with.
actually the movie
Oh, you
made
started.
me
Okay,
better.
so it was movie
Yeah,
first, then I just
yes,
I
exactly. That's,
have to
yeah,
ask these questions. That then I get to feel like I'm doing my job.
yeah,
um, so uh, growing up in France, what were some early favorites? And you said your parents had
yeah,
American
absolutely.
comics, but I'm certain they had French and Belgian comics too, probably
Yeah,
some
yeah,
British comics.
absolutely. Yeah. On the European side, as a younger reader, I was obsessed with books like Lucky Luke or, Tintin,
Okay,
Asterix, obviously. The Smurfs, which
okay,
was like I got to actually direct a Smurfs
yeah.
thing personally into the animation too and make it, so it was like a little bit of a childhood sort of, thing.
I'm gonna
But
have to go watch it because I have a spot in my heart for the Smurfs, and if you did it in 2D rather than 3D, that's what
yeah,
kept me away from the Smurfs movies. And my
yeah.
wife's always up to watch a cartoon. She
Well,
almost
it's
had to
called
jump on when she saw the animation that you
oh, yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah. No, I get you. It's called The Legend of Smurfy Hollow, and it
Yep.
was a TV special that was a companion to one of the movies, but we got to do it into the animation, and because I always felt like the Smurfs never had been given their due, like in terms of quality to the animation, and really connected with like the old Disney stuff, like
Right.
you know, it's that was really an incredible thing. But anyways, so like excuse me, most of my teenage years I spent doing this short film of the Spirit, which was one of my uh, probably my favorite comics
So we're talking
as a teenager.
Eisner's Spirit.
The Eisner
Oh,
Spirit, which I just fell in love with because I love noir, as
yeah.
love noir, and I just loved all of it. And there was just something about it that just spoke to me, and I was just like, I'll do an animated uh, um, movie of it. So I did this like 5 minute short. I put it on YouTube, so if you will Google my name and whatever, you'll see this thing
I
that I
might
did when I
might
was.
have to find that.
It's hilarious, but so and then of course all the graphic novels of the you know mid to late 80s came out, Dark Knight Returns, all that stuff, and that I was like, because at that point, because as a kid, right, you were asking me my favorite as a kid, it
Right.
was, Kirby, Gene Colan. I love Gene Colan for
Okay.
just I loved the superhero stuff. And then when I after heavy metal, the movie, started to read Metal Hurlant, I got into Mobius and etc.
Love
Corbin,
Mobius.
like all the this other stuff. But then when Dark Knight Returns came out, I was like, oh shit, they're doing the great American novel, but with the stuff I loved before. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta do this for the rest of my life. And then I think a deciding factor in my life, talk about lucky stuff that happens or whatever, is the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out just
Okay.
when I was starting college, animation school actually,
I love that movie.
and um, and that changed the business because before to that point. Um, I really don't know why I was going to animation because it was like considered like a dying art form, barely an industry at all, But Roger Rabbit comes out and then soon to be followed by The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, all that stuff. And now there's big money, it's the stuff of blockbusters and stuff like that. So this whole industry exploded with like opportunities for artists and storytellers. And so I got into that, and this is eventually that brought me here in LA, where I've been since in the mid 90s, working for all the studios and doing all that stuff. The latest thing I did, so you mentioned, The Iron Giant is, of course, a big favorite of people. Also,
Well,
movies
it's
like
both a favorite
Despicable
of
Me.
mine and a favorite of my sons, and my grandkids are already into it. So, it's that generational thing in my
Yeah,
household.
it's such a magical movie.
It is.
And I feel like it's a movie that's was always meant to be watched as a family. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Doesn't matter what type of family, if it's just friends or parents and children or whatever, but just like this overall feeling of a family. You watch this with
Well, and
your
it,
people,
it's what I call a true all ages piece.
Yeah.
Um, there aren't actually a lot of true all ages pieces. There are a lot of kids stuff that um, adults can tolerate or kind of enjoy, and there are a lot of adult stuff that isn't harmful to kids.
Yeah, yeah.
But those things that like kids will enjoy and get something out of that adults will also enjoy and get something other than just their kids are happy out of is like a really narrow, I mean, it's things like the Iron Giant, it's things like Jeff Smith's Bone, The Simpsons, the just so it's
Exactly.
always
Exactly.
special when you come across one of those.
Because there's
um
so much truth in those stories and those movies.
well, actually, I also noticed that it was your first credit, and I don't have your IMDb page up right now, but you were on Five Goes West,
Yeah,
weren't
that
you?
was my first, like literally I finished school on Friday and I started on Five.
So you worked with Don Bluth?
No, it was
No,
no, Dunn did the first
he
movie
only did the first one.
at
Okay,
his Irish studio, I think.
okay,
And because they were in Dublin. And but then after Roger Rabbit, Steven Spielberg wanted to continue doing animation, and London was the place to do it because that's where they had done Roger Rabbit. So it was kind of a hub for animation in Europe. And so he started a studio there. So it was Amblin Entertainment. So it became Emblemation.
okay,
And a lot of European artists got their breaks there. This is where I started, and a lot of the team that was there, later on moved to America in the mid 90s, and a lot of DreamWorks, the original team was a lot of the Emblemation team.
okay. Gotcha. I mean,
Um,
it's another movie that I adored as a child. I liked them. I mean, that
yeah,
goes back to my childhood. So I hope I'm not making you feel old. I hope you feel. No, it
no,
won't
not
make
at
you feel
all.
younger that I have grandchildren.
Well, the people don't realize that was Jimmy Stewart's final movie.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Is the old sheriff
Yeah.
walking away in the sunset, Wiley Burp, right? Literally his last movie, his last role, and he was awesome. So
Yeah. Now I'm gonna
yeah,
have to go
so it
watch
was
that
great.
again.
Mm,
Again, very lucky for me. I can always convince my wife to watch a cartoon. No problem whatsoever. If you did like noir movies, I'd have to find time to do it, watch it on my own. But
yeah,
cartoons, I'll say, "Hey, Kelly, can we watch this again?"
yeah,
But yeah, no, that's so. I want to get to comics, but I
yeah.
promise we won't go back to animation.
So
Um, Talk to
well,
me about how
yeah,
you got. I mean, because was Silver your first comic?
yes.
So talk to me
Um,
about how it came about, and then we'll talk a little bit about it because it's really
so
cool.
so animation is having a really exciting moment now with that's final the not the final the last thing I did in animation was What If. I just directed a bunch of the new episodes, but until then, until like with the streamers, it kind of opened up a little bit, like the range of stories you were able to tell, in animation, and so I was kind of getting a little bit bored with what the stories were allowed to tell in animation. And then I was just like, I'll don't forget comics. You've always wanted to do comics. I always had it in my mind like this sort of thing that was on the back burner, but yet I never questioned the fact that one day I would get to do those graphic novels that, that would be trying to, you know, again, like the graphic novels of the that I read when I was in college, Dark Knight Returns, all that stuff. That's of all sort of art forms, pieces of art put together, like all things considered, those are my favorite works. That the
Right.
stuff that I want to be buried with.
Not going to
And
get me to argue. I think comics are the absolute perfect storytelling medium.
yeah, it's just like the
I
writing is interesting, the art is interesting, the combination of both is interesting. It's big, it's immersive, it's a world you get into. So I
but
really wanted to do
yeah,
that. And so as I was starting to get a little bit bored with animation, that was like, let's do some comics just for fun, and I started Silver, and I very quickly, like 30 pages into the layouts, I was like, oh my God, I'm having the time of my life. Where was this thing my whole life, right? And so I just we started to do the conventions and stuff like that. Very quickly, we had the people responded to the books, and it became like a thing, and 1 year in, then I got nominated for the Russ Manning Award at the Eisners for Silver, which made me feel obviously very welcome into the industry.
right.
And uh, and then after Silver came Palomino, which is in this series that you want
That
to talk
that
about,
blew
and
my
then
mind.
and comics just all of a sudden became the thing I'm doing,
Right.
and just when I thought that animation was like probably done for now, that's when I got the opportunity to do What If. And then of course I couldn't pass that up because I was talking about another childhood dream can I come
Right.
true. So I'm doing both. I'm doing
Doing
animation
both.
and comics, still trying to converge it all.
And hopefully not
And
going completely insane.
yes, there's much sanity still left somewhere in there, right in the back.
So I have only read the first. I actually have the original first trade paperback is what I came. I actually and I hope that that because I noticed this today. I hope that Anna isn't somebody that you knew well, because I have
I
a
do not know.
personalized
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sketched
yeah,
book
yeah, yeah.
that I got at Half Price Books.
That's when like in the first few years, I not only
So
would
it's
I
probably a
say,
con copy, is my guess.
does it have a flap on the cover or no?
It does.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so it's a
Yeah,
con
flap.
copy. That's why I used
Yeah.
to do a little sketch in every single book. So some sketches are
Okay.
better than others, but it's the
Okay.
intention.
Well, I have one of your sketches, but I'm not Anna.
Oh, that's
But
awesome. So, well, Silver, so when I started comics, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this myself, I want complete autonomy for, artistically, but also release schedule, everything. So I started Dark Planet Comics, which is my own imprint, and which is we developed distributed Silver through Dark Planet, to the stores and to the
yeah.
cons and stuff like that, and Palmin also. But now we're also working with Abrams Comic
Okay.
Arts, who just put out this really, really amazing hardcover edition of Silver that is super, super beautiful. If you've not seen it, let me show it to you. Oh, there it is. Those two big hardcovers, so you get the whole thing,
Two of them.
two of
Ooh,
them.
they do look
One, two.
pretty.
It's a saga, right? It will block your door, like if you just need to keep your door blocked.
Well,
Oh,
I mean, I loved the first fall. I I bought it because I was waiting for Palomino and I saw your name on the rack at Half Price Books, and I just talked to Howard, so I'm like, $7, I'm taking it. But I read it, and I didn't immediately jump into it because it's a vampire book, and don't want to say I don't like vampires, but I'm indifferent to vampires.
Yeah, yeah,
So I finally read it today and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No, this is a heist book that has vampires.
yeah.
I need more.
Oh, I mean, it's a well, it's a whole saga, right? And it's a I like to call it like Ocean's 11 in Dracula's castle. It's a big heist movie. So it's in a world that's inspired by Bram Stoker's original Dracula universe, and we're 40 years later. So now we're in the 1930s in the noir pulp era. And you have this group of con men who team up with this woman who's a vampire hunter. She's the last of the Van Helsings, and with this kid who has a special power. And they're trying to steal this treasure that's hidden in a castle full of vampires, right? So what could go wrong with that plan? Uh,
Nothing at
and
all. Nothing at all.
and it's a huge it's epic. So, Ocean's 11 in Dracula's Castle by way of Indiana Jones. It's very gothic. It's all
You're saying all the
adventure.
right words for me right now, and I was already sold. How much money do you expect me to send you in the next?
Well, you can, yeah. I mean, it's the beauty of working with Abrams is that the books are really widely distributed, so that's
That's
great.
good.
So some people like to order it directly from us, Dark Planet. Get it from our website, but you can go to Barnes and Nobles or your local comic stores, and they'll have those. So that's
Oh, you've got a
just
box set too, though. That looks pretty.
yeah, so like it's you may not know this, but this trade you got is a collector's item now because
Yeah.
all the trades were sold out at the distributor level, and so some stores may have a few of them kind of hanging around, but
Right.
you can order them anymore. You can get them anymore. Now it's all about the hardcovers.
Well, and this is really fantastic black and white. I love how um I mean it has that cinematic nature that many good comics have, while at the same time taking advantage of things that comics can do that are harder to do in cinema. In cinema,
Yeah.
you know, um, your panel placing is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Your one, I mean, I don't think in pictures. I'm more of a writer, so for
Hmm.
years I paid way more attention to the writing in comics than the art. But through the podcast and talking to artists and talking to writers who write for artists, etc., I've started noticing all sorts of little details on a much more granular level. And um, you
what
can
I what I try
tell.
to do with the what I try to do with the writing is always in my writing is to be natural,
Right,
because it's so easy to write. So what I mean by easy is that you can fall so easily into the trap of word salad, that
right.
is hard, uh, and then the people don't feel real like the in the book, right? And I think that's, I mean, there's a lot of great writers and everything, but the thing I learn really by working with actors
Yeah.
is when you're with them and they're saying the line and you're like, either they make it work in a way that you didn't think would work, or sometimes you just give them something and they say it and like, oh my god, it's, what I mean? So just trying to have language that never feels wooden, or it's only there to just hammer the plot
Right.
forward, or that it always feels like it's really fully committed to people being people and just talking.
Uh, I was, and I'll admit to only having skimmed it. So if I get any part wrong, um, correct me. But I was reading your process stuff at the back
Oh yeah.
of this trade, and I was struck by the fact that you say you script first, but really dialogue heavy script. You don't do a lot of art direction in your script, and then you
That's
take your
right.
script and you draw your pages, and then you edit the script while you're letting. lettering.
Yeah,
Um,
because
and
the
for
play
somebody
is the
working
thing.
on their own, that just seems like to me, that just makes, and I know every cartoonist I've talked to works differently and it all has different. I love getting into neuroscience. Our brains work very differently.
Oh yeah,
My wife and I are always discovering how differently our brains work.
yeah,
We've known for a long time that I think in words and she thinks in pictures, but we've recently figured out that like she thinks more in like blobs of color that sometimes coalesce. And I think in like computer code words, even though I'm not
yes,
a coder. It's like if that,
right.
it's constantly problem solving webs.
That's funny. Yeah, exactly. It's you know, it's even when you're drawing, you know what I mean? Like your eye doesn't. I think there's just this magic of looking at a drawing now from a drawing, and it's a drawing you did like 5 days ago, and how
Right.
you even with just 5 days have passed, and you how differently you see it. You know, it's because your brain only sees what it wants to see, and only has its own way into the visuals and stuff. So that's fascinating.
But yeah, no, it made so much sense to me that
So yeah, I like to answer your thing. Yes, because you know, like the only way that I know, I can't, because see, like my for me, my visual brain and my writing brain, if you want to call it that, are they work separately. Like for instance, I
okay,
could not write a script where I would be typing panel one, the character is this big and moved. You know, like I know some people
right,
write this way, and it's good for them. But for me, it's just I just can't. Like it
right,
makes everything will be like my instincts will not be working for me if I write like this. So
right,
I have to write it like in the form of writing that I'm, trained to do, which is like a screenplay. You know,
okay,
and when you do a screenplay, the thing you're trying not to do is to direct from the page, they call it, right? Where you don't want to start to say, and then the camera moves. Leave that to the director or the cinematographer. Just write the play. What are
okay,
people doing? What are people saying? What are those choices and those responses and those reactions that people have that are true to who they are in this situation? And once you write, and true to their voice too. And once if you that's why I focus on when I'm writing. And sometimes I see images, in my head, like, oh yeah, I know what I'll do. But I just put it aside. I just keep it in the back for now. And then I get into the layouts, then the finals and stuff like that. And yes, at the very end, I edit the dialogue either because I have a better because the work is iterative. It's all about layers of performance on top of each other. And the further down you are in the process, hopefully the closer you are to the truth of the moment because it's been sort of performed through the drawing, through the color, through this. And then you get to and now you know exactly what that last word is, that what it needs to be.
so just because it's what made me absolutely fall in love with your work, um let's talk Palomino.
Yeah.
um First, tell me like where the idea came from, because
Um,
it's an interesting story. And even, I mean, you've been in LA for a while, so
yeah.
that makes it make a little bit more sense. But when I think French native, I don't think honky tonk.
Well, the thing is, well, yes, it's true in general, but the another side of my life that I don't that talk about as much because it's a little bit in the rearview mirror is that I used to be a musician.
Okay.
And I worked every possible club that you can imagine in LA and in France before that when I was younger and stuff like that.
Right.
So like the life of the working musician and the guy working the club and playing the fifth set at 1 in the morning, I've lived it and I know it
Okay.
and I love it.
Right.
And and
What
I,
did
I
you
do
play?
love, sorry,
What did you play?
I play guitar.
Okay.
And I did play a lot of country and a lot of roots music, rockabilly, all that stuff.
Right.
And so and then I I knew even in France, learning that music, and I knew of the Palomino, this legendary club in LA, which if people don't know about it, they can research it, but it's just
Or they can read
legendary
about it at
place.
the back of your graphic
Yeah,
novels,
exactly.
available at darkplanetcomics.com.
Darkplanetcomics.com. That's correct. Uh, you know, and it's so real life legendary music club in the San Fernando Valley here in LA that um, was at the center of a lot of things up till the 90s when it closed. And so I always knew, because that was such an amazing place, where like it was where the B-side of Hollywood, the music world, the of country, but also rock, like the whole Topanga Canyon kind of vibe, all that stuff converged there, and so it was an amazing scene, So I always knew that I wanted to do some neo noir because I love noir stories. I love LA
Oh,
crime,
absolutely.
I love LA stories, and I always knew that I wanted to do something in that vein, that would take place in the world of the Palomino, which is, if you can't place if you want to place the Palomino in terms of movies, if you think of things like Every Which Way But Loose,
Right.
so the club, or Hooper, like the movie with Burt Reynolds. So the club was seen in those things, but the tone was different. So if you brought the vibe of To Live and Die in LA, but you did it at the Palomino, then you'd have something really super cool. And so I always had that high concept, and I have a lot of high concepts, but then I don't always have my way into it, And then one day, it just came to me, like I saw this one scene. It's a scene that's not even in the movie, in the book anymore, but it was him, the guy, and his daughter. Because for
Okay.
people who don't know the book, the hero is a guy who's a former cop who's now a private detective, and this is 1981 Los Angeles, right? So by day he's a private detective, and by night he is a working musician at the Palomino, playing the pedal steel guitar, but also he's full-time dad to this teenage daughter who's even more of a hard ass and a hard boiled kind of badass than he is, and the two together are really, really hilarious. So, and
Yeah,
that's what
my next question was going to be about the daughter, so you're segueing perfectly.
oh yeah, well,
Keep going.
okay, well, so just one day, we were out of the country, we were on vacation, and all of a sudden, boom! I just see this scene with the two of them, and immediately I knew who they were. So I just kind of locked myself up in a room, and I wrote that scene for a few hours. And again, that scene's not even in use in the book, but the characters just fully landed as who they were, and that was my way into the thing.
I do also love the Snoopy poster on the wall.
Yeah.
Um, I actually love a lot of your background stuff. You clearly put a lot of thought into scenery. That's nice. But I was going to ask, what eh, the noir centered around Hollywood, centered around a dingy nightclub, that all is common. What inspired you? I mean, not common. I'm not trying to make it out as, but that's the sort of thing we expect in noir. Um, what inspired? I mean, you said you saw the scene, but the daughter is really one of the things that makes this different and cool. Um,
So yeah, so like the thing with the thing is, like, to me, so the most important thing about this book is that it's lived in. So it's lived in the sense that, like, I've raised two daughters in LA, I live in the Valley, I, played in the clubs here. I'm friends with the musician from the PAL, which closed the year that I arrived in LA, so I never worked there, but I worked
right.
with them in other situations after that. And so it's the non-touristy version of the thing, because how many,
Okay.
like, I want people to think that this is like you see the Hollywood sign, and no,
Right.
it's not the touristy version. It's the lived-in version with
Right.
places of LA, parts of LA that people may not know about. Is the B side, but it's the real side, and
Okay.
it's all real. And all the crimes are based on in the story because it's a mystery,
Right.
are based on actual things that happen here.
Actual things that happen.
But
Well,
the
so
daughter, that's
so
where it
so
came
you got
from.
Some Carl Hyacin going there too.
Right. So the daughter, very inspired by my own kids, who are like, I have three of them, two of them very, very badass women, you know.
I'm
Um,
not going to ask you to say which two are the badasses and make the other one feel bad.
oh no, no, the other one's a boy, so he's
Okay.
his own
So he
kind of,
knows he's not badass.
yeah, yeah, he's more like the little boy in silver.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I mean, I think like that's the way I like to talk about Palomino is it's a neo-noir, so it's like the LA crime in 1980. So it's like To Live and Die in LA by way of an Altman movie, and by way of every which way but loose, right? In the Palomino of it and the music of it. So it's a really fun mystery. It's because you have this kind of really like gnarly mystery, crime mystery that both the father and daughter are trying to solve in their own way and taking it from a different end, but there's a lot of truth in it, and there's a lot of slice of life because again the father daughter growing up in the valley, just the life here, stuff like that. But also there's a lot of, we've seen a lot of books, wonderful books like The Watchmen or whatever, that are the 80s as the place where the 50s came to die, you know
Right.
but the 80s are also the place that where today was born, for better
Right.
or worse, probably for worse,
I mean, I was born in the 80s, so I don't want to slam him too much.
no, I love the 80s, but it's a very pivotal, like, and for instance, like the there was a thing in the 80s that still existed, is the working musician. Like our guy in the story is a working musician. Like his
Right.
job is also a detective, but his other job full time is there 6 nights a week. He plays at the Palomino,
Right.
and as luck would have it, became family. But Archie Francis, who was drummer at the Palomino in the house band for 40 years, just lived 2 streets down from me.
Right.
And in the 80s, you could get a job as a musician at a club, work 6 nights a week, and make a good middle class living and raise your family and own your house in LA. You were a working musician. Now, of course, that does not exist anymore. And so the working musician, in a way, was the canary in the coal mine of what happened to the American middle class in the last 30 years.
Right. That makes
So
sense.
so there's so there's a lot of fun, a lot of sass, a lot of badass, a lot of gnarly violence and stuff. But there's also a lot of slice of life that is very
There's
lived
a
in,
lot of
and
heart.
also a lot of depth to like this. What
Yeah.
do the 80s mean to us now
Well, and
in
I
hindsight?
like all of your characters' depth. I mean, even our first murder victim, I feel like we actually get a feel for her in the like what 10 pages that she's alive.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you don't skimp on. I noticed this in Silver too. It's easy in an action book to not develop your characters or not give them. I mean, you're acting for this is it's not a good enough comics term for it. So I just say acting. The acting you do with your characters is really phenomenal, whether it's facial expressions or body language. Um, I laughed when I saw that there was a because I often don't wind up reading the quotes on the back of the book until I'm done with the
Mm.
book, particularly if I know I want to read it. So I laughed when I saw that there was an Elsa Chartier plug on the back of the book because all through the book I was going, "This is so Elsa."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love Elsa. Yeah, she's a good
Oh,
friend.
Elsa's amazing. Um,
I'll tell you, I'm so glad you're commenting on the acting in the because to me, drawing, whatever, everything, it's all a performance.
yeah,
And my formal training was as an animator. And when you animate, you're working with a vocal performance that is done by most times a really great actor, and so you record so they do their part first, and then as an animator, you're really trying to step in that river for a second time and really kind of shadow it, and to really kind of get the energy of it right. Like, if it's a glance, is it exactly, you're trying to get really into the energy of the moment. And so when I write, it was just going back to the writing of it. I really try to, I'm acting out the scenes in my head like I wouldn't write any differently for a movie. And then, because the truth is, I would get bored. I would not know what to do with the drawing if I just couldn't just immerse myself into the moment and just try to act it out through the drawing and just kind of lose myself in the energy of it. And so that's, in a way, so that's what I'm trying to do, is bring those two traditions together with what I got from both. From animation, it's the film of it, it's the clarity of it, that you're never lost in who's who, who's where, who's trying to do what, but also to really try to connect with the energy and the vibe of every small moment. And with comics, what I love about comics and about those classic graphic novels we're talking about is that the uniqueness of every page, right? You see a page from a Kirby page, or a page from whatever, like Dark Knight Returns, for instance,
right.
and you see the page and it's that page. It's not the next one, it's not the one, it's something you've seen. It's like this visual bell that cannot be unrung, you know what I mean? And so every page is a unique sort of its own work of art, quote unquote, you know what I mean? It's its own
Right.
piece, it has its own identity, its own statement, visual statement, so it's unique in that way. And yet at the same time it's sequential, and yet at the same time it's got the hopefully the a little bit of the fluidity and immersive qualities of film language. So I'm just trying to put it all into the art form.
Um, I have been paying a lot of attention lately as two of my passions have been colliding, music and comics.
Oh,
Um, I talked to Dave Chisholm when he put out Enter the Blue. He's since put out his Miles Davis book is amazing. Z2 Comics in general has been doing a lot of good music comics. Um, Obviously, it's the heart of Palomino, and what I love about your music scenes, I love about the music in Chisholm's work and in any number of works. I can't always hear it because, like, I just don't know the songs here, but I can feel it.
right.
I can feel like
Thanks.
I'm in the club. So talk to me about how you approach a musical scene to evoke that.
It's interesting. I had this conversation with a musician friend of mine, we always have this conversation because I have this thing where when I think of chords in music, I see colors. Like, to me, certain
Okay.
chords have certain colors. Literally, I see a palette,
Okay. Okay.
and so color is definitely an element. But also the thing is, yes, when you do a book, it's very tempting to, like, how do I denote music, right? Am I gonna put, like, clefs and notes, and
Which sometimes works really well.
sometimes works really well, but it's symbolic.
Yeah.
and I didn't want the read to be a symbolic read. I wanted the read to be sensory and emotional. And so music to me is about space. It's about how does it feel the space. It's about the space between the notes. Intervals between notes is what forms the chords and what gives color to the music. Are there opens, intervals, or and so to me it's in the drawing in a way that I can't really rationalize, but a state of mind that I'm trying to do when I'm drawing a music scene. I'm trying to let the shapes and the space sort of filled with that. I like musical space and kind of space on the panel just become one thing for me. And I'm trying to do it, and it's also how the characters react to it and how they are connected to it. And that hopefully, I'm glad that you said that. What I'm chasing is that this emotion that when you're reading the panel and absorbing it, basically you're absorbing the experience of the characters in the panel, and you
Yeah.
feel what they're feeling that when you feel like you've heard the same music they're hearing. You may know or not know what it is, but it doesn't matter. You felt it the way they felt it, which
I mean,
is
I particularly love the one of the first music scenes you do where you do the outlined yellow lyrics
yeah,
and you start hearing them outside the club, so you can tell
right,
that they're playing loud.
right,
Um, you can hear them in the parking lot, and you can hear them on the edge of the club, and you don't actually see the band until like the fourth page of
right,
hearing the lyrics.
right.
And at
which
that
is which
point,
is
you've got
again
all of the lights, blinding you on top of everything, and it's
and it's to
very
try to
much,
recreate the
um,
experience, because when
right,
you're going to a club, this is how you're experiencing it. As you're parking outside, you're hearing the bass. You're not quite hearing the fullness of it, but it's there, and which is why the letters are transparent in that moment, because it's not yet a solid thing, but you're already hearing it. And then as you get inside, then the different you start to hear like the words of the song that's being played by the band, and it hits you differently, what I mean? And until you find your way to you actually see it. So it's all about using the visual elements that comics offers, which is, from the size and shapes of the panels to the color to the, all of it,
right.
to
Anything you
just
can imagine.
exactly to
That's
try to
why I love
immerse you
comics.
into the experience.
I mean, you worked on Into the Spider-Verse, so you've worked on one of the movies that's convinced me that animation may at one point be able to do everything comics can do. But
Yeah,
the reason I love comics is the only limits are the creator's imagination. And
absolutely.
beyond that, the reader themselves is the final collaborator more than in any other medium.
That's right.
Uh, I mean, the 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 audience is always a collaborator, but
Yes.
but
Yeah,
in
it's
prose,
absolutely right.
in
It's a very active read. Comics is a
right,
very active read.
right, um, yeah. I mean, there's so much that goes on in the space between panels. There's so much that goes on that's seen but not heard. You have to figure out. I mean, yeah. There's so many games you can play, so many things you can express. I mean, there's a reason that we our mission at 22 panels is to explore, examine it, and elevate the medium of comics. We just when we started out, it's like, yeah, I don't want this to be the comics podcast where we just talk about whatever Spider-Man's doing. I really don't want this to be the comics podcast where we talk more about movies than about comics, because it's comics that we love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's about
Um,
the art form. It's like
It
what is
is. It's
this
such an
medium?
amazing art form, and that's why where I'm like I, I'm jealous enough that you grew up with a store that had comics at your fingertips, but that it
Dude,
was in France means that you literally had like all comics at your. I mean, France is like the epicenter of. availability of comics, at least the way I understand it. I've never
Yeah.
gotten to go, but I've talked to enough people who either live there or have gotten to go there.
Yeah.
um,
You know how I discovered Will Eisner?
no,
So one day, my mom, I was maybe 10 years old or something, and for whatever reason, maybe I was on vacation. I was on, it was like school was out or whatever. I was at the store, and she goes like, "Well, I'm going to this distributor. You want to come with me?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." And
right,
then we go to the place where is basically her like the version of Diamond, for
right,
her what that was, and it's a warehouse. And dude, I'm in a warehouse with pallets and boxes, and every box has those treasures in it. So I'm like opening box after, and she's like, "I'm gonna do my business. Just look around, see if they." And dude, I'm like literally in like the Indiana Jones's,
right. The
warehouse
warehouse,
comics, and I'm opening those crates and I'm finding these things, and I pull out this French edition, this gorgeous black and white French edition of The Spirit, and I'm like,
right,
my God, what is this? And
right,
and I fell in love with it, and I think one of the things I connected with Eisner is that he was trying to push the medium, talk
right,
about trying to what can I do with this that keeps pushing the connection with the reader,
right,
that lets
right,
them experience non-trivial things,
right, right.
as
Um,
immersively as possible.
yeah, no, in a lot of ways, Eisner was like 40 years ahead of his time. So much of what he did, you didn't see again until his disciples were doing it in the 80s. You know,
Yeah,
um, such a fascinating guy.
yeah.
Um, though, though a recent podcast interview subject apparently didn't like him very much, and he says the feelings were mutual. So that was an interesting moment. I'm like, I
Wait, who
don't
said
know what
that?
to say. What?
Wait, sorry, who said that?
Howard Chaykin.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Apparently, he hated Eisner, and Eisner hated
Yes,
him. I'm like, I so don't want to touch that one
yes, 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 yes. And then, like I'll tell you, like,
because I like you both.
and I've never met Will Eisner.
Right.
Uh, the thing that I think, and sometimes you have to separate a person from their work. I
Yeah.
don't, but
Yeah.
I've been lucky in my life that everybody who was a like an artistic sort of inspiration for me, like like the giants that a lot of them I get to work with. Some
Right.
I just got to know, and they said never meet your heroes. Well, that was never
That,
an
in
issue.
my experience, that hasn't been an issue in
No,
comics.
everybody whose work was awesome that I've met,
Yeah.
they were awesome people too.
I
So
mean, my co-host and I have been doing this podcast for a couple years now, and we're like, God, 200 some odd interviews in because, as it turns out, almost nobody says no, even though we've got like 30 regular listeners. It's not like I'm going to be doing you huge favors. I mean, I hope that I'll manage to pump your next Kickstarter in a meaningful way. I sometimes feel like we've got a weird group of listeners that is an outsized value because I know that I've got comic creators among my listeners and I know I have comic store owners among my listeners.
right.
But um really it just turns out that most people who make comics like to talk comics.
It's
And
look, no one goes into comics into any like no one either opens a comic store or starts to work as an artist or writer in comics going like, "I'm gonna make a lot of money with this." It's just like
I
it's
hope
not
not, because
when
if they do, they're really delusional.
yeah, right. So like some people do it. That's great. You know what I mean? But what I mean is it clearly like it's for me when I started doing when I was a kid and I figured like I'm gonna be doing animation. I mean there barely was an industry.
Right,
It was like a dying thing.
right.
But I didn't care. I just like so yeah. And I think that's why I think it's the passion.
Well, and I think that it's even among people who are cartoonists and do all of their own work, that don't have a separate inker or separate colorist or whatever. Um, there's enough hand selling and or need to do conventions or whatnot that it's a really hard business to make it in if you're not nice.
Right. If you don't like people, this is not it for you. You know what I mean?
Right. In terms of the people who do collaborative work, there are very few people who are good enough writers or good enough artists that people will continue working with them if it's a pain in the ass to work with them.
For sure.
You know?
Too short. Life is either too short or too long or both, you know?
Right. um, and again, you have to hand sell. You have to hand sell to stores. You have to hand sell at conventions. I mean, I wish we lived in a world where people were as excited about the next comic book as the next comic book movie, but it's not the world we live in, and it's not really ever been the world we lived in. Um, Maybe in the 50s, maybe in the teens with comic strips, but they're just they're bubbles.
Yeah.
Maybe in France, maybe in Japan, um, which I mean, both of those countries I want to visit almost exclusively just to go to comic shops and see how people treat them.
I
When I
mean,
hear about
again,
Japanese digests just
right.
getting left on trains because people are done with them and will leave them for the next guy, it's like that's amazing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I've never been to Japan, but yeah, France I've been obviously.
I
But
hope.
um, but yes, I mean, like those comic book stores are just beautiful. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And and you do have, that's the thing with
Right. The
France is that you,
appreciation for the art form seems to be great.
yes, it's very culturally present, and
Right. Which again, that's my goal for America. I don't know if I'm big enough to make it happen, but that's my goal for America is
one
read
shot at
more comics.
it's
I love that
see,
schools are reading more of them. I love that colleges are reading more of them. Um,
it's, I'll tell you my experience. When I started doing comics now, like again, all my life I was, but just like really doing it over 10 years ago, it was um an interesting times because I was just coming back to the world of comics, and I was like, oh boy, I've not been in comics in a while. And man, will the guys who want to be buried in their Green Lantern outfits be interested in my stuff and whatever? It's just, I didn't
right,
know. And turns out a lot of them did, but also at conventions, I was running into a lot of people who, people who at the time were in their like mid 20s, who would like fell in love with like The Walking Dead on TV or whatever, all that stuff, and they were like, man, I love this thing. And they would go like try to swim upstream to where does that come from? And they would find their
right.
way, to a comic book convention, and look for stuff that spoke to them. And the thing that worked out great for my books is because it is they're comics. You look at them, they look like comics, but they do benefit from a lot of the stuff I learned on the film language kind
Right.
of side of it, which brings a clarity and an accessibility. Because a lot of those people would come to me and would say, "Hi, I'm new to comics. I love The Walking Dead or whatever on TV, but I try to read comics, but I'm confused. I don't know what should I go like this, like that? You know what I mean? It was just a sense that, of course, for us who we grew up in this, it's just
Well,
like
and
that's
that's
that
the
question. But that's it. If you want to bring new people in, you just can't assume that they're already fully,
no,
so, and they were like, but yours, I read them, it's like I'm reading a movie, I understand everything. And again, it doesn't mean that every panel looks like a movie, it looks like a comic, but
right.
it has enough of consistency or whatever in
Yeah.
the,
I
in
I
the
think
story.
also um I think those of us who read a ton shortchange the fact that there is actually a comics literacy. Reading comics can help you read in general. The other way is not necessarily true. Being able to read does
Yeah,
not necessarily make you good at reading comics. Um, so there is a specific comics literacy. And like with all literacy, one of the keys is just hooking you enough that you do it even though it's not easy because you're interested in the story. You know, my wife, for the first decade that we were together, even though she loves art, she loves storytelling, would be just, I'm not into comics. I can't read them. I either get distracted by the art or distracted by the words. I can't put them together. Blah blah blah. Um, and then one day I brought home from the library for myself. I'd given up on trying to get her to read comics. Hillary Fitzgerald's Campbell's murder book. My life as a true crime junkie.
yeah,
My wife is also a true crime junkie, so she wound up reading it before me. And the next thing I knew, she was reading every true crime comic she could find. And she'd start asking me for stuff. I'm like, yeah, I gave that to you for Christmas 3 years ago. I gave that to you 5 years ago. And she'd go find it on her bookshelves and she'd get stuff
yeah,
from the library. And then she's like, oh, I really love, you know, young adult animation movies. I'm going to see what young adult comics are out there. She devoured those. Now she reads almost as many comics as I do, different
yeah,
stuff sometimes.
yeah,
But so I mean, some of it is what because yes, there's some comics that just like some literature, like some movies, you don't start somebody watching movies with like Memento.
right, right.
Here's your first
This
movie.
cannot be the first movie you see. That would be
Right,
very,
right. You don't start people reading books with like even Dickens in this day and age because it's just so dense,
yeah,
you certainly don't start them reading with some of the more out there sci-fi stuff where you really gotta, I mean, you gotta be careful with like I love Kurt Vonnegut and I didn't fully grasp Slaughterhouse Five
right.
and truly enjoy Slaughterhouse Five until I read the Ryan North Albert Montes comic adaptation. I went, oh my God, that's what's going on. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's that's why to me, yeah, comics, if anything, is as rich a read as anything,
Oh, yes.
because it's obviously literary. I mean, like, it's just like there's all sorts of books, all sorts of comics, but you can be as have as much literary merit as you want or you can.
Right.
There's no one stopping you for writing something amazing.
Nope.
And then it stimulates all the the visual literacy, the understanding all those, putting all those cues together. So I think it's a very rich experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta get people into it if they didn't grow up loving it. It's like everybody has this story, like, oh, I hated math, but then I got this one teacher one
Right.
year when I was a sophomore, and now I'm into it,
I gotta
and
tell you,
so
I'm a special ed teacher. And like the greatest compliment I ever get is I didn't think I liked this, but now I do.
exactly, exactly, and
I
so
mean, I
that's,
almost cried earlier this semester. I got
yeah,
assigned to a student who had to do an assignment. They were just starting a poetry unit in his English class, and he'd been missing the first day, so he had the packet, and he had to do it on his own rather than with everybody else. So there was nobody to try to, and it was like, does anybody know poetry? I'm like, yeah, I got it. So I sat down with him, and the first question is, what do you think of poetry? And he's like, I don't. I mean, I think it's dumb. Blah blah blah. I'm like, well, put that down. He's like, I'm allowed to put that. I'm like, yes. It asks, what do you think of poetry? It doesn't ask, what do you think you should
yeah,
think of
yeah,
poetry?
that's right, that's right.
But then we had to start reading certain poems. And eventually I would start, okay, uh, because he'd give me like an incredibly surface like thought on it. And I go, okay, well, let me read it to you. and I'd read it, but I'd be more careful with the phrasing and
Right,
whatnot, and
right,
go,
right,
oh,
right.
this is about this, and like at the end of 45 minutes, he turned to me, he's like, Mr. E, I think you made me like poetry, and I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
yes,
That is so awesome.
and like 3 months later, at the end of the or 3 weeks later, at the end of that unit, he had to write his own poem, and he wrote a phenomenal one, and
Right.
I helped him practice it because they had to like they were doing one of those poetry readings in our black box theater. Um, but yeah, no, it's always amazing to be able to take somebody who doesn't think that they're into this or that and
Yeah.
guide them to
And
it.
just find a way to sidestep all those assumptions and just offer them a way into it, you know? But the work has to do is you can't just because you can't pitch one thing and then they open it, they don't get it, right? So the work has to also be, be honest in
Accessible and
terms.
appealing.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, what I love about coming across a good noir comic or a good sci-fi comic or a good autobio comic is there are so many people in the United States who still think comics are just superheroes.
mm,
So when they say they don't like comics, what they're saying is they don't like superheroes.
right,
But they love mysteries. It's like, well, read this. Oh my God, this is amazing. They love sci-fi. Here, have Saga. You know how
right.
many people I've sucked in by going, here, have Saga?
Yeah, yeah. I believe it. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so as we're starting to we got like 20 minutes tops left because I need to reset. Um, so I gotta ask my favorite questions to ask, and I'll probably ask more of you just because I know that I can ask music questions too. But I'm going to start with um, tell me a comic that you love that you wish more people loved, that you wish you had more people to talk to about it.
Um, so that the more to be able to talk to about, more people to talk to about that. That's almost like another shit. There's a comic because people have been asking me because personally, it's funny because like I start with the writing, but as a reader, is the art first. If I cannot
Okay.
get into the art, I cannot get into the book, right?
Okay.
It has to be art that has, for me, for my taste, right? That has a combination of chops in terms of the draftsmanship of it,
Right.
but also so that it can carry the stakes and the emotions and stuff, but also that is not just straight up realistic, but that also has a visual take that kind of inspires me and takes me somewhere else and
Absolutely.
so with all that said, like one of my really good friends, but also somebody who I am hugely in love of his work is Tommy Lee Edwards. And he, just a couple of years ago, he did this book called Grendel, Kentucky,
Okay.
that I don't know if that many people read it. I don't because I have not
Not
seen
enough.
a
And
lot of.
I'm even going to be honest about the fact that it's been on my list forever, and it will probably get read within the week now
Yeah,
because you
it's
just mentioned
amazing.
it.
It's amazing.
Um, but
And Tommy is
it
like,
yeah,
and
it's
it's
somehow one of the few AWA books that I haven't read.
right. It's fantastic. And I'm looking at his panels. And so I was just sometimes I just stare at them, you know. I'm like, how did he do this? What is this? What am I looking at here? This is so amazing. And again, it's that complete mastery of being realistic enough so that the stuff feels compelling, but at the same time artistic and free and with a level of abstraction and freedom in it
Absolutely.
that just blows your mind. So I would say check that one out. And then something more along the lines of let me tell you about it. It's just like I'll just say mm, one of my treasured possession is that's right there above my desk here is a Batman drawn by Mobius, like an original, like a sketch
Oh
that he
wow.
did 30s more. I don't know. I want to say 30 years ago at a signing in Paris. Uh, and Mobius.
Mobius.
And it's funny because like he also under his name Giraud or Gir, he had three
Okay.
aliases. He did Blueberry, which is like this
Blueberry is amazing.
mind-blowing
It's one of
Western.
the best westerns ever. I love Blueberry.
So obviously it's completely mind-blowingly incredible, but it's one of those books that I could not read as a kid. I don't know why. And I loved Western, but for whatever reason, I just could not get into. There was something, and maybe it was too grown up for me, or I don't know what it was. I just could not get into it.
It's
Um,
slower than your average western.
yeah, yeah, I don't know what it is.
Because it took me a while to get into it, and I still haven't finished it all. I have a
Yeah,
great appreciation for the art and the story, but you're used to western having a boom 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 pacing, and it's
yeah.
got a much
Yeah, maybe it was the pacing. I don't know. For whatever reason, as I was not blessed with the ability to get into it when I was a kid. But so, however, all his stuff as Mobius,
yeah
the
inside
Inkall,
the
all that
call
stuff, and
airtight garage.
yeah, and that sort of linear line that's almost Lynn Claire, but more realistic and so dead on,
Right.
just the ability to do just and capture, just like to me that's the it's really, and I keep talking to people here who yeah, oh, sometimes people, of course I know Moebius, blah blah blah, but very often even artists, maybe it's a generation thing, I don't know, just don't, they're like, "No, I'm not sure I know what that is," and it's his Silver Surfer, for instance,
Yeah.
is the story is so weird, but the panels, like just how he's
Yeah, I will say that I'm not impressed with Stan on that story,
yeah,
but Mobius did a phenomenal job.
yeah, I mean, like to me it, like the ability to, it's to me drawing is about like can you perform this sensation or this emotion for me, and in this case like the sensation of flying,
Right.
of the surfer just suspended in the air, you know what I mean, just incredible, you know um so yeah, so Moebius and Tommy Lee, my
Yeah,
recommendation.
I'm flipping through Tommy Lee Edwards' work, and I've read less of it than I thought I had because I've known the name forever,
Oh, is amazing.
but I haven't read as many of his books as I thought I had. He did The Question with Rick Veitch.
He did a pinup at the end of one of the Palomino books. I don't know if you saw it.
I did.
It's incredible
I did.
painting. It's just crazy.
Grendel, Kentucky is officially like next on my list. It's on my list anyway because I think
And he's got, because he's such an amazing artist and illustrator. He has a little bit like Mobius. He's got a lot of different styles that he can do. And so he has a style that is very painterly, that is obviously amazing. But he also has a style that is more traditional inking.
okay,
And because I'm a comics guy more than an illustration guy, that's my favorite style of his. And Grendel is in that style,
excellent.
just old school, kind of inked in brush, and it's
I
just
honestly think the only reason that I didn't manage to do it is, or read it when it because I read almost everything AWA. Axel Alonso has been doing a great job of
yeah,
curating work there. And it
yeah,
just happened to be coming out at the time that there were like 30 other great books coming out. So it
yeah,
wound up being the one that slipped through the cracks and I
yeah.
haven't caught back up. Um, but it's now I have it bookmarked on the computer. I have my global comics account. They have all of AWA. Um, which leads me actually to a quick question. Do you have a specific reason that you haven't gone digital with any of your work? Right now, they only appear to be in print.
No,
In
so I
print.
actually, yeah, so Silver was digital. We were, so when Silver was published through the Dark Planet Comics, we were in print, but we were also in Comixology, and that
Okay.
was great. We were like part of their essential reads and stuff like that. So that was really great. And then now that Silver is being published by Abrams, then we don't do any of the publishing. So they I don't know what they're doing with the digital, but
Okay.
it's up to them, And obviously, Comixology doesn't exist anymore. So, but I know there's a
Well, not
Kindle
not
edition.
in yeah. There's Kindle, but
And Palomino, yes, I don't think we're offering the digital edition. Um,
I mean,
I
I
don't
ask
know.
your stuff is good enough that I'm going to continue getting it in physical form, though I
Uh,
also do enough reading digitally that you'd get more money from me if I could buy it both ways. Um,
I think
but
one of the
also as
reasons,
somebody who's running out of space faster than I'm running out of money, um, digital's become a big deal to me
yeah, digital is
sometimes.
great. The thing with digital that I'm struggling with is the double page spreads. It's because it's so, and my work is very. I always design the page for the spread. You know what I mean? Even
Right.
it doesn't mean that it's just one spread. Sometimes it is, but and so I think that the spread as a unit of storytelling is such a big
I mean,
aspect. Of
it's ironic that you say that because the specific reason that that I wondered if there was a digital, and I'm trying to find the page. There was a page, a double page spread that I loved, but I think there were movie posters on the wall, and I recognized Blues Brothers, and I recognized something on the other side of it, and there was one that was in the crack of the book.
Oh
And I'm like,
yeah.
if this was, yeah, I can tell that we've got Close Encounters and we've got Blues Brothers, and I don't know what this movie in the middle is because it's right in the crack of the book.
Yeah, I couldn't see on the. I have to look on my.
Yeah, it's in volume two.
Yeah. Let's see.
I do love the Dodger cap there on the same
Ah,
page.
yeah. Volume two.
A friend of mine was taunting me yesterday. He bought Dodger season tickets and he was showing
Oh,
me
it's
pictures of his new
Fame.
seats. It's Fame. Okay.
Fame. Yeah, you got Close Encounters, Fame, and the Blues Brothers.
No. But so yeah, I mean it's twofold for me. Um, sometimes particularly with double panel spreads, I like to be able to have them uncut by the middle.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
second is when I really love artwork, I sometimes like to be able to go panel by panel and
yeah.
look at the
Yeah,
whole thing
sure.
to really be able to see. I mean, I brought up Saga a minute ago, and Fiona Staples went from an artist that I liked a lot to an artist that I think is among the greatest of her generation when I read Saga panel by panel and
Ah, yeah,
started noticing some of the little details. And I
sure.
always read it so that I go from the page to the panels and back to the page. So I'm not skipping the whole
Yeah, yeah.
page experience, but it's like holy crap. And then you read like Love and Rockets panel by panel, and you're like, how does Jaime Hernandez give you literally a frameable piece of art in every panel?
I know. Yeah.
um, so yeah, Grando, Kentucky, definitely on my list now. Uh, then my other question that I ask a lot of people, but I have to ask you because you got music in your books. What are you listening to lately? What do you like?
Ooh.
Do you listen while you
Uh,
work?
all right, so I'll start with the last one. No, no, I don't listen when I work because I'm just I used to, but I'm trying to be present for the work.
Okay,
And if I'm listening to a song or music that I like or care about, it just catches my attention too much. And I'm either listening or like, what is he playing? What is he doing? Oh, how would I
right.
do that? Whatever. I just get sucked into it, and it pulls me out of the.
So do you work in silence then, or do
Yeah.
you have
Do you know when you drive, you're driving,
yeah,
and suddenly you're like, well, did I already pass this exit? Like I have no recollection of the last 2 miles for what you see that
right?
you just sometimes that happen. So when I work, I'm in a state kind of like that
Okay,
where it's just like I get into it and I'm in there. And
very cool.
if I have any other experience at the same time, or if I'm like, then it's like I'm not doing as good a job.
Okay.
Or sometimes and if it's writing, there's no way I can listen to music while I'm writing, especially if there's lyrics.
Right.
And if I'm doing the penciling, like the rough drawing, which is really when you're trying to nail that, and I could, if it's been a super long day and and I'm like honestly bored with being at my desk, but I need to squeeze another hour out of it and whatever, and I'm doing something that is more on the mechanical side, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
then yes, I'll maybe I'll put in something. But by and large, no, when I'm working, I'm just in it, it's
Okay.
like a movie playing in my head, that I'm trying to channel.
Very cool.
um what do I listen to these days? I mean, I have to say, that's a good question. I'm not been as actively listening to stuff lately as I should have.
I
I'm
get
gonna
it.
say there's because as you know, I love country. I love roots music, all kinds of stuff, and I love to see, like, I'm loving like this new generation of musicians, people like Billy Strings, for instance, who do you know who Billy Strings is?
I don't.
Well, look him up.
I'm
So
I am.
this
My
guy's
my friend
probably
Google is right here.
late 20s and stuff like. So there's a bunch of kids, I'm gonna call them kids, who just grew up out of bluegrass and stuff like that. So it's very subcultural, but they
Okay.
have the star power to kind of cross over, and they're becoming like known far and wide beyond just people who say I like bluegrass, like people say I like comics or whatever. It's
Right.
bursting out of the bubble, and that dude is amazing. Just and so there's a whole new generation
Hey, he's playing
of
in my
people
neighborhood
like,
in May.
yeah, it's amazing, amazing. Uh, um, for me, I would say, um, like my old I have a fondness for California country rock, which is why I came here. Yeah, I kind of love that style, which has its but I also love I think some of the greatest, talking about poetry, the Texas songwriters, your Guy Clark and your Tones Van
Yeah.
Zandt and your people like that. uh, um, there's just as much, their poetry is just as incredible and mind-blowing and gut wrenching and cutting straight to the heart of the human experience, as anything that anyone's ever written, so and it's also, there's so much storytelling in their music, look, you listen to a song like Poncho and Lefty, or something like, just any song by Tones Van Zandt, or and just those are just you know to take you somewhere, it's just like the music that makes you happy to be sad, if that makes any sense, what I mean?
It
It's just
does.
like
It makes
it,
total
it's
sense.
so human, so vulnerable, uh, um, so unpretentious at the same time, so this is stuff I like. At the same time, I was never a singer or songwriter, I was, so I like, by default, I get very easily bored with music if there's not playing in it. So I like that there's some playmanship. That's a word.
Well, you're a guitarist. Do you have favorite
Because
guitarists?
exactly, like they said, never let the guitar player mix the record, So I'm a little bit guilty of that, my favorite instrument, I have to say, of all, although I've played it just a tiny bit, but not enough to really say I played it, is the pedal steel guitar.
Okay.
It's my favorite instrument of all. Um, the Eddie in Palomino plays the pedal steel. That's
Yes.
such a special instrument. That's one of the most well-known sound in popular music, and yet people don't know what makes it, or and musicians like I mean, there's a lot of great players, you know, but it's also an instrument that takes you somewhere that really uh, um, so you know,
One of my favorite songs has is Sister Morphine by the Rolling Stones, which I'm pretty certain is isn't it? Well, I know it's Ry Cooder, but isn't he playing a pedal steel on that?
I don't know who
You know
plays
the
the
song?
scale of that.
No, I know I know the credit is Ry Cooder playing steel guitar. I just don't know if there's a difference between pedal steel and and steel
Yeah,
because
well, a steel guitar, basically, there's all sorts of steel guitars. As long as it's fretless and you're sliding a bar over the strings, that's considered steel guitar. But
okay,
some of them are just like a lap steel, which is like it's just strings and the bar. And then you have the
okay,
pedal steel, which is like more you hear more in country, but you hear it in other things too, where there's like pedals that change the tuning as you play. So it will pull on some of the strings, or you have levers that release some of the strings so they will drop, you know. So like when you're, you know, listening to country music and you hear those like boom, you know, all those changes inside a chord, something like a chord that will resolve within like the bass note will rise from the back and resolve the chord or whatever. That's all done with the pedals and the levers where
okay.
you it's an amazing instrument. Very hard to play, obviously, but
Now I want to go out and see somebody play it. I have to look around. I fall. I mean, like you just said, you know, you haven't been actively listening to a lot of music lately, and I get busy and sometimes don't actively listen to a lot of music, or certainly not explore newer music versus just falling into the albums or bootlegs that I already have and love, and like listen to Pearl Jam at Better Royal
that's right.
Hall while I was reading your Silver, because it's like I just know that album and I love that, and it's like comfort food. And that's one of the beautiful things about music, is that it can be all of those things. It can be background comfort food.
Yeah.
It can be this is my entire focus. Um, you've played live music. I assume that you also go to live shows. What's your favorite concert?
I'll tell you my favorite. Well, hmm. Um, like the concert. Well, it's interesting. Like there's a concert that I saw when I was a kid
Okay.
that was the most influential concert I saw was Emmylou Harris when she was traveling with a hot band,
Okay.
and they had this tour. So it was in France. I saw them in France. There was this incredible band, this incredible guitar player in it, uh, um, uh, um, whose name was Frank Rijkaard, who's not the. She's more known to, you know, for having Albert Lee or James Burton in the band, but that's a guy who was also absolutely amazing. Uh, uh, and, um, and so it was a double bill. It was her and Jerry Lee Lewis, and and that was amazing. You know, I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis was like, and that was in the '80s. He was at the top of his acting out and being a bad boy and whatever. You know, so uh, um, I've learned later on by musicians who were actually in the Emmylou band that they used to call it the what they call it, the waiting around tour or something like, because they were waiting for Jerry to show up every time. It was really funny music. But but it was just an amazing, and like, and it's funny because like it was in France, so I was into country, but like most of French people didn't know these people. I mean, they maybe
Okay.
knew, they didn't know Emilio Harris, you know, and and they are playing this song Restless, which is like a really fast picking kind
Cool
of, you
song.
know,
Yeah.
song, and then the song ends like big, and this moment of complete silence, 10,000 people going, what the fuck was that? You know, and then they just go nuts, you know. So that's something I saw when
That
I was
would
a
be an
kid.
amazing
It
experience.
really
I mean, that
made a
reminds me, one of my
huge,
favorite live recordings is
huge experience. Yeah, yes.
there's a BBC recording of Led Zeppelin playing Stairway to Heaven before it had been released. So the audience had never heard it before. And it has that moment where they finish playing the song and you could hear a pin drop
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then they explode.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would love to be in the audience for something like that.
yeah.
That just, I'm very jealous. You keep making me jealous.
Well, and I'll say like the pendant to that is like maybe 10, 15 years ago, something like that. I saw Jerry Lee Lewis again at the House of Blues in Anaheim. So it was
Okay.
much smaller room and stuff like that. I was just like, and I was just watching and I'm like, holy shit, this is Jerry Lewis. He's just standing right here and he's singing those songs that fell in love with when I was a kid, halfway around the world, and he's just right here playing those songs. And there's nothing fake or affected. There's not any pretense to this. This is as fucking real as
Right.
anything can be. That
Sounds
was,
fantastic.
it was not like the greatest performance in the world or anything like that, but it was one of those moments where you feel like, wow, I'm like touching history here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, sometimes what makes a great show isn't purely great performance or purely great music. I mean, obviously, if you get that great performance, that's great too. But one of the best shows I was ever at was all one of the reasons it was such a great show was because it was both the worst performance I ever saw from the artist and the best performance I ever saw from the artist. I used to go see Tony Bennett every time he played Ravinia, which is an outdoor um, venue near Chicago, and I think it was like 75. It was either his 75th birthday year or his 80th birthday year. I remember
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
one of those. It was one of those major birthday years. And before the show, the guy that I always go with and I were commenting, he, we love him. He's always hot. He's amazing, but he'll play for 90 minutes on the dot and he'll say good night. And that night, the first 45 minutes, he was terrible.
no,
I mean, not like terrible, terrible, but terrible for Tony Bennett, terrible.
right, right, right.
I mean, we were starting to comment, is he finally starting to feel his age?
Yeah.
Is this going to be the last time? That sort of thing. And then at the 45-minute mark, he caught fire. Just crazy good. The band was hot. And then sure enough, 90 minutes. Chicago, you've been a great audience. Have a good night. And he made it almost all the way off stage. And then he walked to his drummer, had a few words, and the drummer started going again. And he came back to the mic and he's like, how about one more song? And he did that after every song for
Oh,
the
that's
next 45 minutes.
oh,
So
that's
we got 90 minutes of on fire Tony Bennett after getting 45 minutes of Tony Bennett sounding like he was an old man.
yeah. Finally, if he get back, see, that's what I'm talking about. It's just like when you do the work, right?
Right,
You gotta either you're in it or you're not,
right,
And if with those moments where you're in it, then you're just trying to ride those, and
right,
just you don't want to leave that state.
right, right. Well, and I mean, for music to me, that's always, I mean, particularly for those like a Tony Bennett, like any good bar band or whatnot that aren't necessarily singer songwriters. It's not you're not there because they wrote great music. You're there because they're performing great music. The
Yeah,
difference between a great bar band and an okay bar band is how much they mean it. Are they in the music or are they going through the motions?
right.
The
Exactly.
reason I have always loved Tony Bennett more than I like Frank Sinatra, even though I think Sinatra is technically a better singer. I think he's
Hmm.
technically got a greater range.
Hmm.
Sinatra at his best is definitely better than Tony Bennett at his best. But Tony Bennett never sang a song that he didn't mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And Frank Sinatra mailed a lot of them in. you know.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, sometimes you see that in comics too. I mean,
Well, the thing is
because
that like in any like there's this thing in the you know something that people ask me a lot at panels because like sometimes I do panels like how to break into comics, how to break into
right,
animation, how to do this, how to do that, and there's this misconception by a lot of people who are in this aspiring kind of stage at this stage that they're like there's this idea that one day you become a made guy, and it's just everything's easy, that you know how to do it, and and of course, obviously, there is such a thing as experience and whatever, and as your phone rings or it doesn't or whatever. That's, of course, it's true, but the thing is, the experience never changes, right?
right,
Whether you're a kid or whether you're not, it's always you and the work. And are you engaging with it? Are you fully honestly fully in it, or are you in this kind of weird defensive state with it, and because the truth is like s- you know s- the day job, like dream jobs, as I always say, I tell people, right, listen, like the sad thing of the human condition is that your dream job of today is your day job of 6 months from now, you know what I mean? And so it cannot be about the job. It only has to be about the work,
right.
you know. Um, and the work is just being fully committed to the moment and the performance of it, and just doing it.
Yeah. Well, Stefan, it has been a blast. My friend Eddie is saying hello.
Hey, Eddie.
Eddie always makes appearances on podcasts. He likes to
Oh,
try to steal my microphone,
yes.
um, because that's his thing. Hopefully, we'll have you back around the time you're
I had a
thinking.
really great time.
You,
So
yeah,
anytime.
you said you were writing. You'd finished writing and were in the layout stage for volumes 4 and
Yeah, and my
5 of
layouts
Palomino.
are when I say layouts, they're actually, you would call them pencils too. I mean,
Yeah,
like basically once I'm done with that, then it's just basically final drawing slash inking. It's all
right,
digital. You
right,
but final line.
right.
So I'm doing 4 and 5 at the same time because that's the end of the story, and I'm like 220 pages into the roughs.
Okay,
And out of so I maybe have like maybe 40 more pages to go.
okay.
And then
And
then I
and
then
at
I
least three different mysteries to wrap up, if I'm counting
That's right. That's right.
correctly.
At first I was like, oh yeah, it'll end in chapter, volume 4, and there's like, no, 5. Yeah, but it ends
I
super
mean,
fast.
for no, let me rephrase, because you opened a fourth mystery in the final pages of.
It's like, and it
so
all
so you have
wraps.
four different mysteries to wrap up in these two volumes.
And I'll be honest, that's why I'm doing 4 and 5 together, and that's why I wrote them
so
together.
so that they'll come out in relatively short order.
Well, yes, and also for my own sanity of knowing that I was wrapping everything correctly, the way it
That's fair,
should be wrapped
right?
uh, um, without, rushing things.
So hopefully we will see a Kickstarter early next year.
Yeah,
What
I
you're
think
thinking?
so.
Okay,
I think so because I still have like this, but when it's all said and done, it'll be like close to 300 pages of that I still need to ink and
right.
put in color and so on and so forth. So
Well, I look forward to it. We will definitely have you back around then. Um, you're always welcome back. We do book clubs, so if you happen to look at us on your feed and go, "Ooh, that looks cool," drop me a line. You can get
yeah,
involved.
sounds great.
Um, Actually, this weekend we're starting our noir book club.
Oh,
So we'll be reading Miss Tree. Well, I've been
ooh,
reading Miss Tree all week.
that's awesome. That is very
So
awesome.
So, Stefan, it has been a blast. I'm so happy to have met you. I
Same.
love your work. I'll
Thank
be
you.
tracking down the rest of Silver shortly. Um, and like I said, if not sooner, we'll definitely have you back when you've got a Kickstarter to promote, because this is fantastic. It's really, really good work. And so happy that Howard told me to read
That's
it.
all.
So for Stephan Franck, this has been 22 panels. We will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22 Panels Podcast.